FAIRtax is coming, don't stand in the way. FAIRtax is coming across the USA. FAIRtax is coming, clean up this mess. We got to get rid of the IRS. Hey, hey! Hey, hey!
Hello and welcome once again to FAIRtax Power Radio. I'm Bob Paxton.
And I'm Ron Malero.
We are the FAIRtax Guys
Guys
with part 3 of our interview with Autry Pruitt. And before we get into this third segment, though, Ron, remind everybody, if they have not heard the first two, FAIRtax Power Radio episodes 23 and 24, they need to go back and hear that. But 24 especially, he made some comments that we didn't really have time to elaborate on last time, so let's hit that real quick.
Yeah, there's a couple of things that he said that I found very interesting. One, that he mentioned that national candidates are now pursuing the Americans for Fair Taxation. They're behind the scenes, quietly. They're asking for help from people like Steve Hayes, the president of our national group, and so forth, about the fair tax. It's getting more attention all the time.
Yes, and part of that is because Steve Hayes and others like him are going up there to Washington on a regular basis, and they are horse collaring as many of these legislators as they can. And that's, again, one of the reasons Americans for Fair Taxation needs your support at this time.
Absolutely, yeah, because it does. Steve goes up there at his own expense, and Peggy Green Ernst goes with him. They pay her travel expenses, but these folks donate their own time to do this. And there's probably no two better people in the country to go up there and lobby for the fair tax.
Yeah, they just had a meeting with the chairman of the Ways and Means Committee not long ago.
That was a good one.
That was huge.
We now have a chair of the Ways and Means Committee who has been a co-sponsor for several years. This is a big step forward. But the other thing that Steve has mentioned to us is that there's more acceptance on the part of the Democrats for the fair tax. They're actually pursuing Steve. I mean, it used to be that they grudgingly gave him time to talk to them about the fair tax. Now they're pursuing him, and they're asking for more time. So it's coming around. People are understanding that the fair tax... People are beginning
to understand this is not a partisan issue, that
Exactly.
people on both sides of the aisle, there's a lot of good in the fair tax for people on both sides of the aisle, regardless of what your political affiliation or persuasion is. The fair tax is good for you.
So in segment 2 of the interview, Autry said something to the effect that there are a number of Democrats who are attracted to the fair tax, but their leadership doesn't want to hear anything about it. I think that's changing. I think that is changing, and it's a change that's very positive.
Indeed, I hope so. And we, the people, have to keep pressure on our politicians to do that.
Constantly.
Absolutely. PopVox, a real good way to do that.
Yep, that's right. PopVox, POPVOX.com. You can weigh in on any legislation currently pending in Congress, and you can comment about it, whether you're for it or against it, and your comments go to your representative and your senators. It's a good website.
All right, well, let's go ahead forward with part 3 of our interview with Autry Pruitt here on FAIRtax Power Radio.
I don't think the tax system. First of all, number one, you're going to have elements in both parties that are going to go against the fair tax because they want the current crony system that we have.
Yeah.
So that's the first problem you've got. The second problem you've got is you're going to have Democrats. You're going to have to do it probably in a midterm election. A presidential season is going to be hard. That's why Obama didn't run on. Think about it. Obama couldn't run on changing the health care system because he wouldn't have won. He wouldn't have won. So that's why everybody was shocked, because he won, and then all of a sudden he's like, boom, single payer health care. Well, not single payer, but universal health care.
That's the ultimate goal they're working on.
Yeah, I think so too. But that's what he was like. The same thing with the tax system. Every politician up there running knows that if they try to come in with this brand new tax system, except for Mike Huckabee, if they come in, but Mike Huckabee has some other issues. He's got some other political issues. What are Huckabee's chances, given his background, given his support of Kim Davis, given a lot of things. What are Huckabee's chances of actually winning a national election? I actually think they're less than Donald Trump. They're less than Ben Carson.
Could be.
I mean, I'm tough on him. I've been told, I've never met him personally. I've been told he's a great guy, and I definitely love his support of FAIRtax. And he certainly is probably one of the best debaters out there. But you asked me a question that went to politics, and I'm looking at this politically, and I'm saying, hey, politically, what happened? I think Cruz has a problem.
Well, Cruz is a co-sponsor in the Senate, but he's actually coming out for this flat tax.
Yeah, that shows you the political problem. That shows the political power problem. But I think Cruz could come over. I don't have any inside information or anything like that. But I think Cruz could come over. Because you know why he's a flat taxer? Because it's easier sell. I believe this. I think Trump's the same reason. The reason why they say, oh, I prefer these 3 flat tax tiers, because it's an easy sell. That's why. Going to a consumption-based system takes some brain power. And you're trying to get elected. Cruz Cruz already has a lot working against him, given his rhetoric, given his stuff. The last thing he needs is a tax plan that's far out there, that pushes him even further away from the establishment that he's already been pushed. That's the last thing he needs. Not only that, but these guys have to raise money. And a lot of corporations, a lot of people have an interest in this tax system staying the same. I think this is the politics of it. Mm-hmm. That's why FAIRtax has to fight on that granular level that I was telling you about earlier. And it's gonna. And if you said, "Oh, boom, Autry, you had 1 year to do anything you could," I would go into some Democratic counties, and I would market and push and explain and educate and re-educate on the FAIRtax. I would find the most Democratic counties you can and educate on the FAIRtax so much until the tax becomes a voting issue. And then you'll start seeing candidates come around.
Yeah, but you'd really have to send, Democrats and libertarians into those counties. They wouldn't listen to the typical FAIRtax supporter today.
No, they're not.
How do we address that?
How do we address them not listening?
Yeah. Now, how do we address the fact that there aren't that many people like you that the left and the center will listen to? Because you mentioned earlier, that if I came to them, they'd just think, oh, you're just an old white guy, an old Tea Party, or I'm not going to listen to you. And they don't know me from Adam, but that's what they'd assume. Yeah,
well, I think the issue, how we address that, and we're starting to do it we're trying to do it at the national level. We're going to be doing more soon, hopefully. But how we address that is, frankly, putting more people, not necessarily me, but people like myself, people with different optics, different beliefs, different backgrounds, putting them up there, putting them out there. That's how we address it, making us the front of the FAIRtax campaign, saying we need to change the website. The web marketing is someone who's 70 or 60 years old. Look at the web. They already believe. We need to change the game. Hollywood is real good at it. It's old, progressive, white guys running Hollywood. But who do you think is doing everything? Kanye West. Not Kanye West and Kim Kardashian running Hollywood. It's old, progressive, Democrat, white guys running Hollywood.
Yeah, like Michael Moore.
Yeah. I mean, what they've done is they've said, hey, but we're trying to reach a certain perspective. We got to get savvy about this. We got to get marketing about this. This is politics. And I think one of the problems is that because of the way conservatives generally think about things, because the way Republicans typically and Tea Partiers think about things, is they don't think about it like younger people do, or particularly those who are young libertarian, younger progressives. They don't think about it that way. They think, oh, it's a good idea, it's a great idea, everybody should buy it. That's not how it works. That's not how it works. When you have someone like Jay Leno go and randomly ask 10 people on the street who's the vice president of the United States, and people say, oh, Bill Kerry, Joe Kerry. Some people actually say Hillary Clinton. When you actually hear people say, oh, yeah, Hillary Clinton was vice president of the United States, or Richard Nixon is running for president.
You've been watching Jesse Waters, haven't you?
Yeah. I mean, that's what happens. Jesse Waters, on Fox News. I mean, that's what happens. And it's not to be pejorative against people. It's what we've done on the program. You don't have to go that far to do it. So if that's what you're combating, then you have to look at marketing. You have to look at optics, and you have to say the marketing for fair tax is wrong. We know in principle it's right. We know it will help. Let's find those that help, and there are. There have been people. There's a woman who used to be on the fair tax board. Her name is Marilyn, and one of the things that she was in communication with a lot of the black churches. So there are elements that believe.
All right.
There are elements of Hispanics and blacks that believe. And then the next thing we have to do is not conflate issues. One of the things that sometimes we do internally on fair tax is sometimes there's what I call mission creep in there.
Mm-hmm.
When we're at a fair tax event, we're converting to fair tax, and you see someone say, oh, yes, you know what? The fair tax is going to allow us to expand universal health care coverage. You have to swallow every second of pride you got and put a smile on your face and say, you know what? If that's a priority for you, there'll be money there under the fair tax to do it.
Uh-huh.
You can't talk bad about Obama. One of the first fair tax events I went to, I couldn't believe this. Someone actually said to me, not understanding the optics, not knowing who I am, we got in a conversation, and this particular person said to me, oh, Obama's the worst president ever in existence. Well, the second you say that, you have shut off everybody who voted for Obama and everybody who doesn't think that. You have to understand your audience.
Mm-hmm.
We're selling something here. So, Frank, to be honest with you, I say, frankly, a lot of people, what we got to do is we got to pay attention to optics. We got to pay attention to marketing. We got to pay attention who's at the front of this campaign, and we have to engage in educating. And once we have the money, once we continue to raise the money, we need to actively hire individuals whose job is to strategize and outreach and get into the communities that are not likely to support the fair tax. One of the biggest things, I've said this, one of the things we need someone who specifically targets the LGBT community.
Yeah, because their economic concerns are the same as anybody else's.
Exactly. The average LGBT person, not only are their economics concerned about that, but the wealth that they're growing, the fact that the homosexual community is adopting kids, the whole homosexual and transgender lesbian community is adopting kids. We need to be targeting that community. We don't need to shy away from that community. We need to say, listen, your interests are our interests. And in the fair tax, that is absolutely the case. But it requires swallowing a lot of pride. It requires listening to ideas being talked about that you don't necessarily agree with. In this area is where the Tea Partiers and Republicans could take a clue from the left. It requires sort of inclusive language.
Mm-hmm.
If you want to get something done, it's like a business person. When Bear Bryant, he was the coach, Alabama football.
Oh, yeah.
One of the most champions. You know who he is.
I do.
He was called about race. He was talked about race. What about race? What about race? And he said, listen, I'm a football coach. My job is to get to the end goal. I leave the rest to the politicians. That's sort of the attitude we have to have.
Mm-hmm.
Our job is to get the fair tax passed. Let's leave the rest to everybody else. And it's difficult to do. But we got to do it. We got to do it. And I do it all the time. And I have a show in which I talk. Listen, people know that maybe they know I'm not for universal health care. But I know how to go into an audience and they speak up for universal health care. I know how to let somebody tell me the 10 reasons that they're for universal care, even if I think they're dumb as a doornail when it comes to universal health care. I know how to take it. I know how to go there, let them say, Obama's the greatest president. We love Hillary Clinton, more Bernie Sanders. And I can say, you know what? Vote. Let's go talk about fair tax. I know how to do that. And so what has to happen with the Tea Partiers and Republicans and the fair tax movement is they have to learn how to sit down and shut up. Sorry, be so blunt about it. That's what they have to do.
Well, that sounds like good advice here.
Do you want to pass the fair tax or do you not?
Absolutely.
Now, you can make an argument. Some have started to make this argument, by the way, within FairTax, that maybe we need to be a partisan organization. I think that's a mistake because when it comes to tax policy, if you become partisan about it, you're going to have to fight every single year to keep it.
Yeah, and you're going to lose. You're going to alienate half the country, regardless of which way you go. Half the people aren't going to like you. And
Exactly.
And since the fair tax is an economic issue, and again, regardless of political ideology, everybody likes more money in their pocket. Nobody likes an IRS audit. I mean, it could go on and on and on. Everybody should like this thing.
That's what I'm saying. And so sometimes I tell my Republican friends, it sucks. It sucks that an older white guy can't go into the audience of young black people and they just don't listen because their ears are closed. But guess what? Who cares? Right now, if they're more willing to listen to Autry, we've had this happen. This sounds horrible. I know people are going to, but listen, I have stayed away from meetings. There have been meetings in various places in D.C. where my personal politics, I'm pro-LGBT rights. We tend, because I'm libertarian, I am not for an authoritarian state, for example. We're not anti-cop, but we're very tough on police officers in my show. Mm-hmm. And so I personally have stayed away from meetings where we have been trying to secure fair tax donors and get fair tax supporters because I knew their personal politics, that they were offended by my personal politics in other areas of my show, where me being there will be a hindrance to the ultimate goal. So I get it. So guess what? I say, you know what, Autry, that's fine. As long as if they don't want to see my little ugly face, and that makes them go ahead and give us, $50,000 for the fair tax, then yay, go. That's
Amen.
the way to go.
It is.
And that has to be the way I've done it. Sometimes I've been told that there's a couple of people that are, they're not racist or anything, but sometimes they don't feel comfortable being themselves because they don't want to be called out as a racist, or they don't feel like because I'm in the room. Mm-hmm. So I'll go out the room. Republicans and Tea Partiers in our organization want to talk about having tough skin and growing up and buckling by the boots. Well, it's time for you to put all that rhetoric to practice. If you're a Republican or Tea Party in our organization, I want you to put that rhetoric to practice, that, these college kids need to be tougher. They need to grow up. They need to learn not to be offended. Well, I would say the same for you. You need to learn how to sit in a room and let somebody talk about how much they love Obama and they have a thrill up their leg and not say a damn word except for go you. And I support the fair tax too. I believe the second weekend, but it doesn't happen that way. I've been in the fair tax meetings, and it doesn't happen that way.
I'm wondering, what kind of reception have you gotten in some of these meetings?
I get a good. I'm not the average person, though. This is the thing you got to remember. I'm on the radio. I do this for a living. I do political talk for a living. So anybody comes against me and any of my thoughts, I'm readily able, with facts and statistics and figures, I'm readily able to do. So that doesn't, so I get a good, the reception I get is generally positive. I only have one fair tax person who will not talk to me at all ever. And that's because I said he was crazy.
Well,
I told him, you're crazy and your attitude is going to turn off people. It's going to turn off blacks. And he said to me, I'll never forget, he said to me, well, I just speak the truth.
Oh, mercy. That sounds like a dead end to me.
Well, it is a dead end. It is a dead end. But luckily for me, he's in his own little hole, his own little world, and I try not to even speak his name, so people don't even know he's associated with FairTax.
Well, then I won't ask you who it is.
I can tell you privately who it is, but
you wouldn't tell me anyway, so that's okay. All right. Well, I tell you what, time flies when we're having fun. We've gone about twice what I thought we would, so we're going to get two shows out of this.
I'm sorry.
Oh, that's not a problem at all. We're happy to talk to you. We certainly appreciate your efforts on behalf of the Fair Tax and your time talking to us today.
Okay. All right. Thank you so much.
Okay. Thank you so much. Again, this is Autry Pruitt for FairTax Power Radio. And there we have it, the conclusion of our interview with Autry Pruitt. Again, it was done over the phone, a couple of little technical glitches. Sorry about that, but it's the best we could do. Lots of good thoughts there, though.
Yeah, we're going to get our engineers on that right as soon as possible. And when I say our engineers, I mean Bob.
Oh, yeah.
But anyways, I think we could probably label this interview as the political realities of passing the fair tax. I think that's a good label for it. One of the things that he said that I find very interesting, candidates embrace the flat tax because it's an easy sell. And, that reminds me of a discussion I had with Herman Cain when he was running for president, and we asked him about that, and he told us you can't run for president and teach people about the fair tax at the same time. And I think that's along with that. So that's why the candidates are not all embracing the fair tax, even though some of them probably would like to.
Yeah, well, Mike Huckabee, of course, is the only one that's really openly embracing it. It has been for a long time.
Yep.
Ted Cruz is a co-sponsor. He's officially signed on, but he has another tax plan in mind, too, at the moment. So we'll just have to see what comes out here.
Yeah, and we'll see what
one
happens.
way or the other, tax reform is going to happen in this election cycle.
That's right.
Absolutely.
And I found what Autry said about Bernie Sanders be very interesting.
Yeah, that caught my ear as well.
Yep, that was very good. So there's more and more support for the fair tax among the politicians. We need to get the media involved. I find that some of the people in the media are woefully ignorant about the fair tax, but one thing at a time. Another thing that he said is that the fair taxers need to stick to the fair tax and let people have their opinions on non-fair tax matters. That's very important. All
Absolutely
right?
true.
When we try to attract, when we have meetings about the fair tax or whatever we do, presentations, we try to attract everybody. All right, and
what you think of Obamacare doesn't matter.
Yeah, exactly.
What you think of foreign policy doesn't matter. At least as far as getting the fair tax passed.
Yeah.
Everybody should like this.
And I'll give you an example from my own personal experience. In my housing development, one of my neighbors lives a couple doors down. She's about as politically diametrically opposed to me as you can possibly be. But a couple of years ago, we came together because we had a situation with the homeowners board of directors that was getting kind of uppity and causing a lot of strife within the community. And a bunch of us got together and we rectified the situation. She and my wife and I worked very closely together because in that case, we had a common cause and we worked very, very nicely together. Politically, we'll never agree on anything. But in that situation, we were in lockstep, and that's what we need to do. Fair tax, all right, that's the best possible situation for federal taxation in this country. That's what we need to work on. The other things, the spending side of it, fine, let that fall where it may, all right?
Yeah, Autry touched on that too. The fair tax does not touch spending, just simply raising the revenue. The debate over how to spend it is still going to be as valid then as it is now.
Right, but we'll get this crazy taxation thing off the board so that people and Congress can concentrate more on the spending issues.
Amen. And again, the fair tax is not a partisan issue. If you look at it, you would think that it's all Republicans like it and all Democrats don't. And that's not really true. There are some on both sides that like it and some that don't. And there are more on the Democratic side that have been not so supportive of the fair tax in the past that are slowly coming around. The name Jessica Wexler comes to mind.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Now, Jessica Wexler, if you're not familiar, I believe you'll find a copy of her letter that she wrote to the Americans for Fair Taxation in 2009. It starts out, I obviously can't read the whole letter. I am an Obama state field organizer who loves the fair tax. It makes perfect sense to me, and I am encouraging other Democrats to join our fight. In another paragraph, she says, but with the fair tax, the partisan divisions that sometimes split us apart can be healed. Here is an idea that is actually good for everyone, except tax lobbyists, of course.
and K Street folks, yeah.
Yeah, and she goes on to explain in great detail why everybody should be should embrace the fair tax.
Yeah, and we touched on this a couple of episodes ago about how the fair tax would encourage the purchase of used stuff as opposed to new ones. And that's something, of course, that the environmental crowd could get on board with very easily.
That's right. That's right, because it's been the message for years. Reduce, reuse, and recycle.
Bingo.
All right? And recycle. I mean, a used car will not be subject to the fair tax because somebody already paid the fair tax on that when it was new. Same with a house, which is a little bit bigger purchase there. All right. So reusing stuff is going to be. In fact, I found it interesting, his comment about it could spawn entire new industries in used products. That's very interesting. It's very insightful on his part.
Yep, and it would again help the economy.
Yeah,
people buying stuff that they're not buying now.
And certainly will help the working poor, the people who are just getting by. I mean, they're going to get the prebate, they're going to get their entire paycheck, and they don't have to buy a brand new car when they buy a car. They can buy a used car. And that's going to help them because no fair tax on the used car. Same with a house, anything else. I mean, if they needed a new TV and Uncle Joe, across town, had a TV that they get, fine. They buy a used TV and no fair tax on it. It's going to help those folks a lot, a great deal.
Absolutely. And again, it's not going to happen without we the people, we the grassroots, putting the pressure on our political representatives. And again, it doesn't matter whether got a D or an R behind your name. Yeah. Everybody should like the fair tax. There is something in it for everyone, and we need to keep at these folks.
All the time. All the time. Let's see. What else? There is a document that I was steered towards a couple of years ago, and it's titled The Progressive Democrat Sales Tax, and it's written by a young man by the name of Connor Carney. Now, what gets me is that he wrote this he's got a date on it, May 6, 2005. If you look that up, that's before Bortz and Linder's Fair Tax book came out. So he wrote this article based on reading the legislation.
Yeah. Well, Steve Hayes has been working for a consumption tax before the fair tax was hatched.
Yeah. And again, he goes through, he's got a couple of things a little bit wrong, but he says, he starts out, I consider myself to be fairly liberal on most issues. So some of you might be surprised that I'm about to take a position that is usually the providence of hardcore conservatives. I support H.R. 25, the Fair Tax Act. And he goes on to talk about, progressivity, and it's not a national luxury tax, helping the needy, and so on. And he makes a good case for why everybody should embrace the fair tax. So that article, either one of these, the letter by Jessica Wexler or this article by Connor Carney, if you would like a copy of it, send us an email to thefairtaxguys@gmail.com. We've got it in our Dropbox. We can give you a link to it, and you can download it and print it out and hand it out to your friends. It's very important that we get everybody on board, and this is a good way to do this.
Yes, and it's very important that you go to www.fairtax.org and sign up there at the national level as well. If you can make a monthly or a recurring contribution of some kind, that would be great. One-time contribution would be great, but we need your numbers. We need to be able to, when Steve Hayes and Peggy go up there to Washington, they need to say, hey, look, we represent a rather large number. That's how the NRA has so much clout, political clout, because they've just got so many members.
Yep.
And so if we can get the same kind of numbers behind the fair tax, then we can have the same kind of clout they do.
Yeah, that's right. So that, as Bob says, that's very important. Fairtax.org, become a member, sign up for the newsletter, and keep yourself informed. This is a big deal.
Yeah, and the webinar is a good way to do that.
We need to thank Autry Pruitt. What a great interview!
Absolutely,
very, very interesting perspective from the young man. A little different than you might hear from other people. So. It was a good interview, and I think it's going to help us spread the word about the fair tax. So, Autry, thanks so much.
Amen. Again, he's a young black man living in New York City.
Yeah.
Not exactly what you think of when you think of a fair tax supporter, but again, our thanks very much to Autry Pruitt for his efforts on behalf of the fair tax and for taking his time to talk to us here at FAIRtax Power Radio. And that's going to about wrap it up for this edition of FAIRtax Power Radio. Thank you again so much for listening. Until we meet again, I'm Bob Paxton.
And I'm Ron Malero.
Reminding you the fair tax, once you understand it,
you'll demand it.
Fair tax is coming. Don't stand